And this kind of goes back to, the consideration that like even a 1 degree deviation from where you want to be on a long enough timeline brings you to somewhere that you don't want to be.
That's a great example.
So, like even if we can catch that 1 degree deviation, the earlier we can do that, the easier it is to help.
Yeah.
And the easier it is for the end user to make those changes, to make lifestyle, nutrition, exercise,
Yeah.
interventions part of their life. And then they're going to get compounding interest on the other side of the equation to get them to where they want to be, or past where they want to be because they didn't know it was possible.
And a great example of that is the obesity pandemic. Like, if we're going through pandemic worlds, obesity is the biggest one out there. And like you said, what's the average weight gain per year? Is it like 2 or 5 pounds or something?
I mean, last I saw it was like 3.5 to 4 pounds,
All right. So say
which makes
four.
sense because someone says, "Oh, it's been 10 years and I was 30 pounds ago."
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
yeah, shit.
So take 20 years, that's 60 pounds. Now put that person on the higher end of it, and it's a 6 pound per year, 30 years. That's 180 pounds you can gain unconsciously. So people don't know how they went from, I was 200 pounds when I was 20, and now I'm 310. Well, you gained a couple pounds a year, which isn't a lot. And that's a great example, that degree of off, right? So that
Yeah.
you end up here when you started here. And I think we're starting to revolutionize the medical care, and I think the people around us are starting to see what we're doing and grabbing onto it. Um, but I really wanted to also talk. This triggered my brain to segue into, when you listen to somebody like us, it's one version, right? Now, I do think we are very grounded. Calories cause weight gain, muscle mass is important, body composition is important. You got to exercise, you got to eat well, and you got to eat protein, carbohydrates, and fat. We've like stuck to that forever, and I don't think we'll ever change.
Well, it's because we have a principle-based approach.
Foundation, right?
Yeah.
Healthcare.
It's not
What
our opinions.
what do you say? That's a good point. This is not our opinion. We're just stating the data.
Yeah.
What do you tell people, or can you comment on, if they went through our Instagram page or our Facebook accounts or whatever, and 5 years ago we were like fad keto, we were Dukan diet, or 2 years ago we were like all vegan, all plant based, or then we were carnivore, and then we're like calories matter so much. We're sponsored by a big company like, I don't
Yeah.
know, Weight Watchers or something. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, calories don't matter so much. It's more metabolic function. And then like these GLP-1s are really good and they should be used on everybody, or everybody should eat kale every day. Like, what do you think about people that should see trends like that? Like, there's a big controversy, the Gary Brecka World 10X, and all these lawsuits going on in the wellness industry. What should people look at as a red flag for who they should quote unquote follow or interact with in their exercise, nutrition, healthcare environment?
Yeah, we kind of touched on it, having a principle-based approach, that principle isn't tied to, deliberately tied to a commercial model, right? Like, so if I just kept on blaming the healthcare system for all the afflictions and problems, and then I have a supplement that's going to cure your
Yeah, yeah.
ADHD, you know what I mean? Like, there's something inherently nefarious about that. But it is also a biased approach where we don't own the rights to saying that muscle mass does X, that lower body compositions are favorable, that a cardiovascular score on a VO2 max is good for longevity. Like, we don't own, like, we don't trademark that. We can't say that we own this and it's necessarily proprietary information. Like, this is out for everyone.
Yeah.
The way that we arrive at those things are then a little bit more tactical, but they have never deviated from how do we acquire muscle mass? How do we increase cardiovascular fitness? How do we balance nutrition demands and making sure that someone is relatively stable with their weight gain or weight loss to the point where we're actually achieving other objective health outcomes?
Yeah.
So that's when I think about people that kind of jump from commercial model to commercial model, they don't necessarily have a good grasp on the foundational anchors that must be applied.
Yeah.
And they're just looking for the next trend or fad. Because largely a lot of people in the fitness industry are consumers of fitness information, and that is very variable.
Yeah,
So whoever they hitch their wagon to, whether that be an influencer, a guru, or even just a commercial system, is going to be dictating how they do business.
yeah,
And to your point, like we've been in business for 20 something years now, and whether we have changed some of the approaches, the goals and the reasons behind them are relatively the same.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've been very founded and grounded in the semi. I mean, you opened your doors as a semi-private gym and were told you're going to fail, which is
Yeah,
pretty amazing. You left an industry and went out. You kind of did it a little bit in the exercise world, what I did in the medical world, just a little later in time.
yeah,
And you swam upstream a touch against the odds because you could have easily just been like, all right, fuck, I'm going to go work at the edge and like, I'll be a trainer and call it a day because I'm never going to fight with them. But you succeeded. And I think the same will happen in the medical world. It is hard to fight the fads though. Like there's a new one on the methylene blue thing. Like
yeah.
I've probably gotten 100 DMs in the past week about methylene blue because there was somebody just came out and put out a huge methylene blue push, like Joe Rogan or one of these guys, which is great. Some of their information is wonderful, but remember they're all marketing gurus. They're not actually scientists. And like methylene blue's been around for years, decades, forever. If methylene blue was the fucking answer, it would have already been the answer,
Yeah.
right? Like the answer is eating well, exercising, and monitoring your body chemicals in terms of lab data. Like the answer is right in front of us. Methylene blue is not the trick pill. It's been around so long. It's a fad now. It's a marketing ploy. It's an easy sell because it's also blue. It like turns your tongue blue if you drop it in water. It's a different color and like, but it's become this big thing that people are hitching their wagon to. So, from a medical end of that question too, if you do speak to a doctor who is who is seemingly trying to push a product more than your accountability to your health, I think you gotta keep an eye on that, because in the wellness world,
Yeah.
kind of the age management, which I don't know really what the right term for it is yet. I think we're still trying to figure that out. Is age management? Is it wellness? Is it who knows what it is? But in that world, there's a ton of hacks as well, right? And there's tons of online, just go see someone for 5 minutes, get your meds sent to you, and start taking things. And those are relatively easy money grabs for the provider. But for the consumer, it's really dangerous. So you gotta sift through your information, track people, make sure they're grounded in what they're saying, database, make sure they're pushing the same agenda, right? Like if somebody's been pushing methylene blue for the past 50 years and they're living a perfect life on I don't know, on an island retired, yeah, well maybe their data is good for methylene blue. But the data is not out there to support half of the stuff being pushed. So it's a little bit of the Wild West, and you gotta find somebody who you can trust, who's founded in the science behind it. The the push for the marketing money to be made in this industry is huge, and I think that's the scariest thing to me because there are people now that the health system has made so sick that if you do dangle a carrot in front of them, they're going to jump at it, right? Because they've just been wronged for so long that they're willing to take advice from anybody. And that's going to be the tough part to navigate the next 5 to 10 years for the consumer. I think it's the fad stuff, and we've already been burnt by it so much. And I really do hope people recognize that, like the agenda of foundational healthcare, exercise, nutrition, and really baseline hormonal metabolic health is kind of the key to everything.
Yeah, I think the phenomenon that we're talking about is one of economics, on both sides of the equation. It's because, you look at someone who's in the fitness space, and if you could parse out fitness versus, let's say, supplements, Supplements is literally double the revenue
Yeah.
as a industry as opposed to fitness, which is
Yeah.
like maybe you're going to a gym. Like, so that alone tells you the psychology of the end user.
Yeah.
They'd rather take a pill than wake up at 5 and go to the gym. Totally get it, because it's like, okay, I can get the same result and all I have to do is take this pill.
Right.
Now, on the flip side of that, the people that are pushing that, and I have nothing against supplements. We sell supplements. We encourage
Yeah. Yeah.
people
Yeah.
if needed or warranted. But you think about it as like, oh, I don't have to be as good of a coach if this thing can deliver the effect. You know what I mean? So everyone's kind of, again, it's just like this cost analysis that they're
Yeah.
doing. And it makes sense until you really look at the outcomes that are being produced. And overwhelmingly, whether you're looking at supplementation or even fitness at this point, the outcomes are nothing to talk about in a positive way,
Right.
because people are continuing to be heavier every year, unfit, have worse health outcomes or measures. So both of those industries are failing. And then when you put that on top of a medical system that's not really designed to handle these chronic diseases, you just have absolute failure.
Yeah, and from a practitioner standpoint, it's funny because I use GLP-1s frequently, and some of the people don't say any comments about it, but some people are like, "Oh, I thought you were anti-pharmaceutical." And what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
say to them is, I'm not anti anything if it works for the person, right? So are there some hard stops? Sure. But then there are these areas where it's the art of medicine. It is no longer purely an algorithm. Like if you're a 45-year-old male, you and me need two totally separate treatment protocols, two very different exercise protocols. My shoulder may hurt, yours may not. My neck might hurt, yours may not. I may burn more carbs, you might burn more fat. You might have a better VO2 right now, I might have a worse one, so I need to do a little more cardio, you need to do a little more weightlifting. Who knows what it is? So when it comes to the GLP-1 thing, or any medicine, what I tell them is, it's you. This is you I'm talking to. If I show you my entire patient client roster, like I don't actually have a lot of people on GLP-1s. It's very few people. And most of the people, it's they just can't get over that hump of not eating, right? And it kind of shuts down that noise a little bit up front and allows them to make those biopsychosocial changes. But at the end of the day, it could be good for anybody. It just depends on who the client is. And that's where the art of medicine comes into play, which is it's lost, right? Um,
Well, you said it the other day about like the AI infiltration in
oh
medicine,
my God.
which is, it can't be anything but algorithmic.
It's it is really so think about the concept at a supermarket. They put in self-checkout for one single reason. It had nothing to do with the consumer, nothing to do with the worker, nothing to do with the products being sold. One reason only. So that the executives in the companies could pay less workers to stand at a cash register. That's it. When medicine pushes AI as your primary care provider, sadly, nobody even sees it as what it is. Where are they opening all these like AI PCP style centers? All in inner cities. You think there's a fucking AI medical urgent care center in Beverly Hills, California?
Mm.
You think that exists in Beverly Hills or in the Hamptons? You think the billionaires in the Hamptons are just driving into a machine, getting checked, and
With
be
a
like, "Okay, I'm
kiosk.
good." No, they're sending it to the people that can't afford to go see a doctor who truly, if they're a little more sick, nah, they can't really make waves. They can't afford a lawyer to sue me, so fuck it. We'll just send them a computer, a bot, to look at their health. The minute AI takes over primary care, we're done. We're done. Then the dichotomy goes from this, who can afford, who can't, to this. It will be a mountain that'll never be overcome. Right? Like healthcare will never be the same. And it's happening. It's slow, but it's definitely happening. And the reason it's happening is because they can get away with a pat on the back till something breaks because the hospital is the safety net. And I am very anti-AI because, as you know, like me and you talking about, like if me and you sit down and talk about your health, it's a very different conversation than if you sit in front of a computer screen that takes your blood pressure, takes a little bit of blood, and then says, "Okay, Mike, you're doing great. See you later," right? That's a very different interaction. But that's the interaction they're getting to because you have to pay less doctors, pay less nurses, your overhead goes down, your P&L sheet gets heavier on the P's, less on the L's, and the executives make more money. And that's corporate medicine. But if no one else sees that coming, that's up to you. You can put your blinders on. I see it clear as day, which is why I left the hospital, right? Like I couldn't, like at one point in time, I was standing in the surgeon's lounge and a high up executive came in with a rep. And I was like, oh, what's that for? He's like, well, we're about to purchase a $6 million piece of equipment where you put these like goggles on so neurosurgeons can stand up straight with their head up and can see the field down here. So I said, you're going to spend $6 million on a piece of equipment. I said, yeah. I go, come with me for a second. We walk down the hallway. There was like 4 broken stretchers, 2 broken OR beds, a broken microscope. And I know the laparoscopic equipment I was using at the time had like some niches, some little glitches in it. And I was like, how about we take, I don't know, $100,000 and fix the shit that's broken before we go buy. But that's the mentality of medicine. Why? Because if you market, it's marketing, right? Foundational healthcare is not present unless you go to a place, I believe, that we have, right? Where your doctor, your exercise, and your nutrition is all in one spot. And the AI thing really blows my mind, but I don't think it's a trend that's going to stop because the train's on the tracks and it's rolling pretty freaking fast, and people are bought in because like, oh, AI is going to solve all my problems. You know, AI was built by humans. It's only as good as the humans that build it. Like, it's not going to outthink you. It's just like you took 8 million brains and put it in one. Great. So you made it sound like it's super smart. But it's not going to, it doesn't solve problems. It doesn't interact. It doesn't read emotions. It doesn't know mood. It doesn't know life situation. You can't sit in the AI guy and be like, well, last night I had a donut because my husband got sick and came home late from work. Like, it doesn't know all that shit. Yeah. So unless there's human interaction, you lose all that and the healthcare world turns into crap. We got a little sidetracked again, which is fine, but we wanted to touch on menopause a little bit as well. I know you had brought that up. So if we want to maybe touch on some of those topics.
Well, it kind of circles back to some of our prior conversations, including today's, is that one of the most common symptoms that people blame on menopause is weight gain.
Yeah.
And yes, that's true, but like we also have to appreciate that as you get older, there is a linear relationship with age and weight gain to a certain extent. And I don't want to say that it's not because of that, but that's not the most concerning aspect. It's more of the concern of the body composition rather than the pure weight gain.
Yeah.
So can you help end users or listeners just think about it in a little bit more specific way where, yes, your weight's going up, but that's not the inherent problem. The inherent problem might be the body composition changes that are occurring as well or alongside.
Yeah, and that's an interesting statement because like right now I weigh more than I did 10 years ago, but my body comp is significantly different, right? So that weight gain for me wasn't bad in terms of body fat percentage. But if you take somebody who's not keen on the gym, not keen on nutrition, and they have weight gain, 9 out of 10 times weight gain with that age is fat increase and muscle mass decrease, right? So not only are you gaining weight, total stress on your body, you're not alleviating that with muscle mass, you're making it worse with excess fat. And what happens is as people age, and if we're going to use menopausal women as our example, them specifically, as they age, metabolism changes, movement changes, function changes. Most of the time, if we were to speak in generalizations, their body fat percentage will go up. And that's the true killer, right? Because body fat decreases metabolic function. Visceral fat has been shown to be inflammatory, cause metabolic syndromes such as diabetes, causing liver issues, causing kidney issues, decreasing your ability to burn calories. And over time, as that builds up and your body composition changes, as we speak about all the time, muscles are the key to longevity and quality of life. Your muscle mass will decrease, or even if it stayed the same and your body mass goes up, that muscle mass you have can't compensate for the excess weight. And you keep building more and building more and building more. And eventually, for the end users that are out there, joint pain, lethargy, exhaustion, being tired all the time, not sleeping well, not being able to move well, and that catches up to you. And the more painful it is to move, the less you move, and the less you move, the more weight you gain. You get a little depressed, you eat a little more. You're probably not eating grilled chicken, you're probably eating Oreos, and like it just piles and it compounds and it builds and it builds and it builds. And it becomes something that gets a little out of control. So the aging process and body comp changes are very, very important in terms of muscle to fat ratios. And that's where we can step in, right? And that's where hormonal adjustments, metabolic adjustments, and actually, instead of hormone replacement, it should be called metabolic replacement therapy, because that's actually what we're doing. We're sparking your metabolism to kick back into action. And over time, working with diligence, you can reverse that and maintain a body fat mass, maintain a body composition structure that's going to be advantageous to you burning calories. Because all you want to do, you said this, I think, on one of our first pods, is become very inefficient. You don't want to be an efficient user of calories. You want to be inefficient. You want to burn excess gas. You want to waste calories on your
gas guzzler
in your metabolism. And the way to do that is build muscle. So I think for women in specific, men too, but women more so, because women go like this, menopause, and actually shut down. Men, it's more of a slower cruise in terms of andropause. But for women, you have to recognize when that perimenopausal phase kicks in, because by the time you are menopausal and postmenopausal, you have to fix it, or else it will be a detriment to your health and longevity, no matter what anybody says. It's data driven.
Can you speak on, I mean, because there has been a couple, this is more anecdotal than anything else, but there's been a couple people in our facility, women, perimenopausal, menopausal, talk about joint pain, specifically shoulder pain, and it's been diagnosed as frozen shoulder or, tendinopathies. What about the changes in hormone profiles that can lead to specifically joint pain or joint issues?
Yeah, so the pure perfect data out there doesn't exist to say hormone replacement or lack of hormones in terms of menopause and joint pain is a causal relationship. But there is a ton of data leading to that becoming a conclusion very soon. And if we extrapolate a little bit from every piece of data we have on hormones, so women during their period, when their estrogen is cycling, have elasticity and lax joints, right? So they get a 2 to 3 millimeters of change. So if we think about that on a cyclic basis, month to month, that more ACLs tear, for instance, around menstruation. Joint mobility changes drastically. If you think about that on a bigger scale, if you're a female and all of a sudden all of your hormones go away during menopause and you lose 2 to 3 millimeters of movement in something like a shoulder joint, which is really not a true joint, but cartilage on bone, a matter of millimeters, and that gets tighter, well, that's going to cause you pain. And the frozen shoulder effect is across the board. And I've seen it lots of times. And there's lots of women that have it. But orthopedic world, OB world don't yet grasp that fully. So it becomes, in orthopedic world, a scope, arthroscopy. Let's go break the frozen shoulder. Let's put you under anesthesia and do what every ortho likes to do and take your shoulder and move it wildly past range of motion. Because while you're sleeping, if I break your ligaments, it's much better for you than when you're awake, right? And then the OB world, who doesn't really recognize menopause as aging or a process of hormone necessity, not all of them, because there are very good voices out there who are, I believe, champions of the cause. I love them. But the majority of OBs don't really believe that. So then you have this opinion and this opinion working against us. So it's hard to get that across. But these women need to know there's a reason your joints start to hurt, because those millimeters matter. And if you never get that laxity because of that cyclic nature of your cycle throughout your whole life, and you don't get that week or a couple days where your joints are really, really relaxed and they just tighten up and tighten up and tighten up once you hit menopause, you're going to have what they call a frozen shoulder. And at the gym, there's probably like 3 or 4 women who have it, one who now doesn't, and recognizably so. She's a little shy to reveal her name, but so we'll keep it quiet. But it's helped a lot. Movement's helped a lot. Back pain, all joint pain in general.
And what about estrogen specifically aids in joint comfort?
So it's ligament laxity, and this is where that data is like you got to extrapolate a little your own from the results. But that laxity that estrogen and the cyclic nature of it provides for the joints, when it's gone and that laxity is gone and those joints become tighter, that range of motion decreases and decreases and decreases, and eventually it wears on the cartilaginous end caps of your bones, and eventually those get irritated, and that joint space gets tighter and tighter, and you lose movement, and then it just becomes a not good range of motion. And if on day 1 it hurts to go to there, on day 2 you're going to go to there, and if on day 2 it hurts to go to there, on day 3 you're going to go to there. And if you keep your shoulder like this, if you or I kept our shoulder like this for a week in a sling and you didn't move it, it would take you 2 weeks to get range of motion back, even without menopausal issues.
Yeah.
So you take a menopausal woman, you put a little bit of pain in there. Now they can't move it. Now they're like, oh, well, I'm going to leave it like this for a couple of days. I'm not going to move it. Well, it gets worse and worse and worse. And eventually that's when you end up with a shoulder that doesn't even move.
Right.
And I think it's shoulder, and I think that the acromioclavicular joint, I think, really plays a big role in that too, because a lot of them have spot pain on that joint even before they get that frozen shoulder. And if you talk to them about history, like if they wear a shoulder bag, they're like, oh yeah, it would hurt a little bit on my neck. And that's kind of, I always ask them that, because then I'm like, all right, we're on to something in terms of the hormonal health being able to help this. And I think there's a lot. Listen, there's nothing normal about menopause. There's nothing normal about having a cycle every month of your life and then all of a sudden that just shuts off. We've normalized it because we've had to adjust it to our social structure, right? Like we've had to say, okay, that's just part of aging. And antibiotics allowed women to live in anesthesia past menopause in a long way, because in the 1930s, the average life expectancy was not 76. You know what I mean? In the 1800s, you lived till you were like 35 or 40. You had your kids and then you died. So it's not a long time we've been around that like the length of life changed. And that's the beauty of modern medicine. Like I said, antibiotics, anesthesia, and surgical practices. But we've become complacent because we went from here to here, and now we're just kind of happy here. The next step is, right, you got to get to the next step. And that's, I think, what we're doing.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Any last comments?
No, that's I mean, we can get into another topic, but that would extend the episode a little bit.
And I do want to congratulate somebody who reached out to us through an email who's a public servant and really wants to push their department to get healthier. And I think if there's any PSA out there, I think if you are a public servant, a police officer, a firefighter, EMS, or whatever, we are depending on you to pick us up out of a disaster and get our bodies out of whatever might kill us. And I think it's really important to make sure that they're very healthy. So as one of those people, if you're listening, like, please reach out. It's crucial to your job role to like help people like me. Like, you know, if my house catches fire, I need you to be able to carry me out. And those people need to be physically fit. And I think the aptitude and the wellness of those departments, I think we need to also focus on. Just as a side note, it struck me as something I wanted to talk about publicly, because it was really nice to see someone in that arena reaching out and being like, hey, I want my entire department to be healthier. I want us all to be in better shape, because if we are coming to save your life, we need to be able to do it. But so, you know, people listening out there, if you are public servants like a cop, a firefighter, mail carrier, whatever you're doing, you know, it's important for you to be healthy. So, you know, please reach out, and anybody who's interested in this world of healthcare, feel free to reach out, ask questions. The Not Sure This Matters podcast email is still up and going. DMs, you can email or reach out to any of us through our Instagram accounts, and we'll be more than happy to address any questions you have.
Yeah, and just a side note, like we haven't been able to upload on the podcast, but you can still find all the episodes on YouTube.
Yeah, and I got a feeling when the podcast comes back, like uploaded, there's gonna be a heavy hitter out of the depths of doom coming at you. Good.
All set. Guys, have a great weekend.